There's a mitzvah from among the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, which at this terrible and trying time, we should all be focusing on. We should all be seeking to fulfill this mitzvah to the greatest extent possible. This mitzvah is what the success or chas v'shalom failure of the war that we are in depends on. This mitzvah is the mitzvah, the loisaseh, of not being afraid. Not being afraid when facing war. The Rambam in Hilchos Malachim says that any person who begins to think and worry during war, umavhil atzmoi, and frightens himself with considering the possible terrible outcomes, over beloisase, transgresses a lav in the Torah, shenemar, al yerach levavchem al tiru, val tachbezu val tartzu mipneihem. So the Torah warns, aloisase, do not be afraid. Once a person is engaged in war, he should rely on Hashem. He should not be afraid, and he shouldn't consider himself. He shouldn't frighten himself with all his imaginings of what might be in store for him or for his people. The Rambam continues and says that not only is that person over aloisase in the Torah, but he's also liable for the blood of Yisrael, of other Jews. He's the one who's considered to blame for all the Jewish blood that's going to be spilt because people are disheartened. And then he furthermore says that on the other hand, if someone does fight, then he's kavanah zakadashim shamayim bilvad, then he is guaranteed that no damage will befall him and evil won't come upon him. So if somebody frightens himself and is afraid, which we all are naturally in these times, if someone is engaged in actual milchama and he's afraid, he's over a lav. It's natural to be afraid. People are in despair. People are worried. People are worried about the various outcomes, and they're weighing what the worst outcome can be and how likely it is. And we're constantly thinking that we don't know what the future holds, and we're very frightened about that. That is natural. But once one is facing a milchama, the proper way to face milchama, the Torah says, is not to be afraid. And in fact, the victory in milchama depends on not being afraid. He is the one who's going to succeed in war. So I want to explain to you why that is so true. Why not being afraid is so correct and appropriate and is the true stance, not merely a good idea, and not merely, if we could say, a lav in the Torah, but actually it is so true that being afraid is inappropriate, is false and incorrect. And furthermore, I want to explain to you why not being afraid is the key to victory. And this is something that we can all control because this is something internal. This is about our internal state. And this mitzvah is the mitzvah I think we should all be engaging in now as much as we can. And this applies even for people who are not directly involved in helping the war. The attitude that every person shows, the attitude of courage, of not being worried, of not being afraid, has a trickle-down effect or trickle-up effect. As the Rambam says, it influences others, and therefore this mitzvah is one thing that is a mitzvah that we should all be engaged in to the greatest extent possible during this time of war. So I want to explain, why should a person not be afraid? The fact is, we don't know what's going to happen. And it's normal to say, look, I'm not sure what the future holds. Some of the outcomes are terrible. And it's normal for a person to be in a state where he can't focus and can't do something b'chol libo, with his whole heart, which is how a person has to wage war. And why is that incorrect? The fact is that it seems to be the right natural approach. So what's wrong about that? So I want to explain, I want to put things a little bit in perspective. the nature of a mental model, let's say, of us Yidden and how we should look at the world. We see so much evil in the world, and that's a fact. We recognize that there's a lot of evil in the world. When faced with tremendous evil, or the potential for tremendous evils, we tend to be very worried. But what we have to understand is that nobody thinks that we are now at the moment in time where we can utterly vanquish evil, such that there's no longer going to be any evil in the world. So that's one thing that we have to start with. The battle, the struggle at this given moment is not about whether we can completely eradicate evil off the face of the earth once and for all. There is evil. You can call that evil Iran. You can call that evil Hamas. You can call that evil the people that are enabling Hamas and the people that are not enabling Israel to do what it needs to do to defend itself. That is part of the great koiches hara, the forces of evil, that are, like it or not, still current in the world. The time has not come to completely erase the klipa. Rather, what then? We always have to think about what can we do? What can we do? What can we do in terms of beating back the ra, beating back the evil somewhat, and empowering and furthering the forces of Tov? So we're in the middle of a story here, and no one should think for a moment that this is the final battle where we're going to somehow eradicate all evil. That's not what we're up to. There's a tremendous evil that reared its ugly head, and now we're there on the front lines of the battle with this particular evil, and how much can we push it back? And to the extent that there are people supporting this evil, to the extent that that's something that we can't change, that's a fact. There's nothing we can do about it. That's a reality. It's a very interesting thing. You know, it used to be once upon a time the Nevi'im would write the history books. The history books are written part of Tanakh. Now, what happens after there are no Nevi'im and history is no longer being written? So the Medrash says that people's actions are still recorded. And Eliyahu Navi, he's the one Navi who's still alive, so he writes down everyone's actions in the history books, and the day will come, I guess, when we're going to finally read those books. So you should know that in those history books, there's going to be a pasuk about these times, of course, and it's going to say something about which evil people, which evil forces, which evil governments were on the side of evil, and which ones were on the side of good, because that's how the Navi looks at current events. That's what it's important for him to understand from Hashem's perspective. And that's something that's a reality that's one day going to be Mizbar, and we shouldn't be disheartened about the fact that there are evil people. They are evil, and in the end of times, when everything becomes clear, we will know who was evil and who was good. And the battle for any individual is to be on the side of the good, obviously. So that's number one. There's a lot of evil out there. It's a reality. We're not eradicating it today. Another thing to understand is, and of course everything I'm saying here is of course autobiographical. I'm sharing with you what I'm working through. We tend to have this feeling of despair because we feel like we're not in control. So I want to tell you a secret. No one's in control. Not Biden's not in control, not Putin's not in control, not the Iranians, not the Chinese. Nobody is in control. There is no one individual who's controlling the world. You know that. Think through that list of individuals and you'll see that they're all desperate individuals. Most of them, they have more power, perhaps, than me and you. But nobody is in control of us. Rather, the nature of this reality where we have this mixture of Ra and Tov and various players who are doing what? They're pushing their agenda. They're pushing their interests. In other words, we have this world which is a big mess of various possibilities, and everyone has their interests. The Americans have their interests. The Iranians have their interests. The Hamas has its interests. And of course, those are evil interests, the latter two there. And then there's various interests, the Russians, the this, the that, and all the various Arab countries and so on and so forth. And you know what? Everyone is doing is pushing their interest, or at least what they think is their interest and what they think they're doing to promote their interest. And we too, me and you and every individual, and even a good individual, also has interests, and his interests are the toiv. So no one should ever feel like, oh, I can't do anything because there's other peoples that are pulling the levers of history. That's not true. History is made up of everyone, the confluence of everyone promoting their interests, and it's very, very important for any individual who's good and cares about the good to push that interest, the interest of the good, as hard and as much as he can. And it's through that pushing, through that effort, that history is made. And he should never feel that someone else is doing it for him. No, it's just a matter of some people can push their interests further and some people can push it less. But everyone has to push their interests, and the good people, of course, more than anyone else. What do we believe about the good? See, you think about it. We're despairing. We feel bad. We feel terrible about the evil that's rearing its ugly head. But you have to understand, believers in the Torah, such as myself, here's what we believe. You could say, I believe in three important things. Everything will eventually be good, meaning the world is structured such that it will end in goodness. We call that Yimos HaMashiach. So there's a goodness that's at the end of history. Furthermore, I believe that the process that brings us to realize this goodness, the fact that there's a process, is also good. And furthermore, on a personal, what my worship of God is to promote that goodness. So those are basically, to me, the three tenets. And of course, they're really old. One tenet, which is Vayar Elokim Ki Tov. The world is good. The world is good. Things improve. Things don't get worse. Things are made to get better. The world is designed so that humanity can find the good. The fact that it's so designed, the fact that there's this process, that itself is good. And every individual's role in it, his avodos, his worship of Hashem, is to further the good as much as he can. As much as he can. How fast we're going to achieve that good, when is it going to come, that we don't know. But what we do know, and all we have to know, when I would say all we have to know in order for us to do our avodah b'simcha is that the world is toiv, the fact that there's a process is toiv, that it's going towards the toiv, and that we can know what to do to promote that toiv, and we must do so. More than that, we don't know. The battle, then, anytime there's a battle, and this, I'm using the word battle very loosely here, anytime there's a struggle to achieve some toiv, where is that struggle? That struggle is not to eradicate that evil, which at the moment we're not able to eradicate. There's always evil in the world. There's more evil and less evil. And even if we believe that there's a process that's eventually going to lead to the total eradication of the evil, at any given moment, the battle for us is only on that little evil, that small amount of evil that we might be able to push away with some goodness. That's where the battle lies. We do not wage war for what we can't accomplish. We should not wage war right now to erase completely all the interests of evil. That's not even on the table. And no one even feels bad that this war won't achieve a complete hiratruv in the whole world. Maybe we should feel bad about that, but that's not on no one's agenda. Why? Because we always think about what's possible. So we have to understand, just because the goalposts of what's possible are always changing in our mind, we're not sure what's possible, we shouldn't despair. We shouldn't feel like the battle is not a battle that we can win, because what we're battling for is only in that area that we're able to win. That's where we have to do milchama. Now, here's what I want to explain then. As we start with, the Rambam says, the most important thing in battle is not to be afraid. And your success in battle depends on that. And here's why. So why is it true that a person shouldn't be afraid? It's true that a person shouldn't be afraid because if you are focused on your worship, which is to battle, to fight the wars of Hashem, to promote the good and to eradicate the evil, if you're focused on that, then the outcome is not what's important. Because the outcome, which includes aspects that are not in your control, those aspects that are not in your control are not what you were fighting for in the first place. Just like a person who might live to 100 is not going to feel bad that he didn't live till 1,000, because the goalposts of what we expect and what we look for are all based on what we consider to be possible. And therefore, our war against evil is only a war against whatever evil is perhaps possible at this moment to push away, to beat back. Anything more than that is not what we're battling. And therefore, in that nekuda, in that point where there's a war, that point where we say, look, what might the outcome be? Might we win or might we lose? It depends on one thing. It depends on whether we are of the conviction that we're going to win. And the reason is because when a person knows that what he's doing is right, he's not afraid. He's not afraid. When he has the confidence that he's doing the right thing, he does what he has to do. Besimcha in the fact that he's able to do his mitzvah of the moment, and win whatever evil he's able to. And then, if the person is functioning b'chol liboy, then by definition, he's going to win the war. Because the war at any given moment for any given person is, can you fight whatever moment you're fighting, whatever evil you're fighting at that moment, whether it's a person who's out to harm a tzaddik, out to harm Klal Yisrael physically, or if it's a person that's spreading lies about Klal Yisrael, or it's an attitude to Klal Yisrael that you will have to uproot, or it's an attitude to rishus that you have to fight with. Whatever the battle is at any given moment, whatever your battle is, that means whatever it is that you exercise control over, that's your battle. And whether you will actually affect what you can exercise control or not depends on mostly, more than anything else, depends on b'chol libay. Depends if your heart is completely in it. And your heart is completely in it when you are dedicated on it as work, dedicated on it as something that you want to do and can do, not something that you're worried about. And the truth is, as we keep on saying, we are not worried because the only thing that we're fighting is that which is in our control. And therefore there's no place for worry. There's only place for confidence. And with that confidence, we can be certain that we will win that battle that we are facing at any given moment. This is our work, our worship in life in general, to be warriors, to fight with evil. This fight now is a literal physical fight that Achenu B'nai Yisrael are fighting. And all of us have to support this same fight with evil as we discussed in the other video, the other shir. All of us can be a part of the fight against evil. And the key mitzvah that guarantees us success in the fight against evil is this mitzvah, not to be afraid. Let's do the mitzvah of not being afraid, b'simcha, and that way we'll spread to Achenu B'nai Yisrael this confidence and this simcha upon which the success and the milchama depends.